Hello, I'm Chylli from Channel Chylli, also known as Try, and today we're back to finish off the rest of Saya no Uda. I think we got fairly far last time, and this time we're just gonna keep continuing onward. Hopefully finish off. He has been buried alive. His world is the silence and cold of the graves. Ever since his voice gave out and he lost the strength to scream, no coherent thought has passed through Koji's mind. Perhaps this is his brain's way of protecting him from despair. Instead, he dreams. Images flash before his eyes, random unconnected scenes from his 20 years of life. Not all are of happy times, there are sad, painful memories as well. But even these are pleasantly warm compared to the death that is now encroaching upon him. Let me double check that everything is enabled really quick. He dreams of mountains. His older brother once took him hunting for insects when he was a child. They sealed their caught butterflies in a plastic bag only to later find themselves holding a bag of tiny corpses. He dreams of his lover. They met at a mixer where he'd been the only one to realize that she couldn't hold her liquor. After she'd had too much to drink, he looked after her while she vomited in the back alley. They toasted each other with canned juice and then... He dreams that he's diving into a black sea. When he reaches the bottom, he looks up to see the moon shining through the surface of the water. As he gazes up at the circle of light, entranced by its roundness and brilliance, the distant rumbling of an engine reaches his ears. Something still conscious within him tells him that this dream is wrong. Have I ever gone diving at night before? The dots begin to connect in his mind, forming a barrier to separate his dreams from reality. What is bothering him? Of course, the sound. The engine noise gradually fades to a low idling, then abruptly gives way to silence, followed by the sound of a door opening and closing. This isn't a dream, these sounds are real. Understanding comes like a sudden blow. This isn't the bottom of a sea, and the circle of light isn't the moon. It's the mouth of a well. The sun has already risen and someone is right outside with a car. The last piece falls into place and he becomes Turno Koji once more. Koji shouts, surprised by how easily his voice emerges. His desperation blocks out the pain of his raw throat. He keeps screaming with all his might. Soon the echoes in the cramped well become deafening and he is no longer certain if his screams have meaning or if he's just howling wordlessly. Nevertheless, he continues. His only desire is to be heard, lest he die forgotten at the bottom of this well. Koji's wait is not long, but even a minute feels like eternity on the edge of despair. Soon the circle of light above him is partially eclipsed by the silhouette of a person staring down into the well. A woman's voice. Koji has heard it somewhere before, but for some reason cannot remember to whom it belongs. The silhouette vanishes, restoring the light to a perfect circle. Fear of being left alone again threatens to send Koji into a panic, but his reason has recovered enough to resist. He said she's going to get me out. I haven't been abandoned. While waiting, he gingerly tests his body, which he has forgotten all about until now. His joints ache and his fingers and toes are numb, but though exhausted, he's still in one piece. After some time, the silhouette reappears at the top of the well.
君、怪我はないか？自力でロープを登れるか？
いや、ちょっとそれは。
Koji lacks the confidence to attempt such a feat. His frozen fingers can barely move.
まあ仕方あるまい。一旦私もそっちに降りる。
After a brief pause, the owner of the voice tosses a knotted climbing rope into the well. He grabs the rope as soon as it reaches him. The rough threads bite into his palm, and relief nearly overwhelms him at the sensation. This is really happening. He's really safe. Now that he's free from despair, questions leap to the forefront of his mind. First among them, who is his savior? The rope shakes as the woman climbs carefully down. The beam from the floodlight slung over her shoulder, pushing back the shadow cast on her body. Soon she is standing in the same mud as Koji and finds himself face to face with...
先生。
他の誰かを期待したかい？
Koji indeed had not imagined that his savior would turn out to be Dr. Tombo Ryoko. Of course, it took him a moment to recognize her. Instead of a white gown and tight shirt, she is wearing a heavy leather coat, denim jeans, and boots with no heels. He must have expected a hike through the mountains. Her light is a blocky all-purpose type featuring side-mounted fluorescent runners in addition to the main floodlight. Survival gear and professional grade by the looks of it.
ひどいありさまだな。ほらこれ。
Dr. Tombo says wryly as she gives Koji a once-over. She pulls a flask out of her pocket and hands it to him.
飲み込まず、ゆっくり一口ずつ舐めるようにしろ。少しはマシになるだろう。
ありがとうございます。
He walks around with a flask. Maybe Koji's old-fashioned, but it doesn't seem appropriate for a young woman, and a doctor at that. Nevertheless, he unscrews the cap and takes a swig and struggles to get from coughing as the potent liquid sears his tongue.
なんですかこれ。
スピリタスウォッカ。着付け薬によし、消毒によし。浴びせてから火をつければ効くような相手にはかなり効く。
Her tone is straightforward and quite serious. Koji can only gape at the doctor, the dark smile on her face doing little to ease his confusion. Is this really Dr. Tombo? There's no trace of the bookish, mild-mannered woman Koji met at the hospital. Her expression is now set in a hard mask and her eyes are sharp and wary. In the darkness at the bottom of the well, it is possible, however unlikely, that the change in her features is due to the ominous shadows cast by her lamp. It's not so easy, however, to explain the change in her demeanor.
先生はどうしてここに？
電話をよこしたのは君だろうが。
Ryoko replies, briskly, glaring at Koji like an annoyed professor.
行方不明者を探してる二人組が妙な留守電の後に揃いも揃って音信不通になったりしたら何かあったと思うのが普通だろ。
はあ。
Koji still doesn't understand why she acted so quickly, but it's a different part of her, what she just said, that seizes his attention.
じゃあ、筑波陽にも連絡を？
したよ。君と一緒で繋がらない。正直なところ、私はてっきり君も死体になってるもんだと思ってたんだがね。
That's right, he almost died, and at the hands of the man he thought was his best friend. Anger and frustration well up inside him. He can't forgive Fuminori's betrayal, nor can he forgive himself for his foolishness. And now he has no idea if Tsukuba is safe. Fuminori tried to kill Koji. Could he have done the same to her?
まあ落ち着け。ここで君がいくら殺気だって見たところで始まらん。
Ryoko says irritably, turning away to examine the inside of the well.
何かあったと思ったのなら警察には届けてくれたんですか？
Koji says to her back.
警察だと？
Still engrossed in her examination of the walls, Ryoko laughs scornfully at the idea.
そうか。君はまだそういう形でケリがつけられるものだと思っているわけか。
どういう意味です？
Annoyed by her condescending attitude, Koji is about to demand answers when she cuts him off with a gesture and shines her light at a corner of the well.
殿君、こいつには気づかなかったのか？
は？
In the light of the lamp, Koji sees that some of the stones are a different shade than the rest of the wall. This must be what Ryoko is looking for.
気づきませんでした。ずっと真っ暗だったんで。
Ryoko's gaze moves slowly along the wall, finally coming to a rest on a gap between two of the stones. The hole is just wide enough for an adult to reach into, open-handed.
君、いいところに落ちてくれたよ。ひょうたんから困ってやつか？
Ryoko says with a grim smile. She wastes no time thrusting her hand into the opening. After she feels around for a few seconds, Koji hears the thunk of something solid coming together behind the wall.
先生。
Ryoko pulls her hand out and gives the different colored stones a gentle push. With the rumble of weight shifting, the stone slides smoothly back into the wall.
こういう仕掛けか。やられたよ。前に来た時は気づきもしなかった。
前にも来た。
Koji wants answers, but Ryoko ignores them and peers into the opening. In the beam of her flashlight, Koji can see a concrete tunnel leading into the mountain.
私は先に進むが、殿君、君はここに残ることを勧める。
That warning is utterly devoid of warmth. Considering his options, Koji looks from the tunnel to the rope and back again. He's practically sweating now thanks to the 190 proof vodka he just drank. But although feeling has returned to his fingers, he still doesn't have the strength to climb. That said, the thought of being alone in the well again makes him shiver.
一緒に行きます。連れてってください。
まあ好きにしろ。
Ryoko steps into the tunnel without looking back, and Koji doesn't hesitate to follow.
前にお会いした時と随分雰囲気が違いますね。
Koji says sarcastically, following Ryoko as she moves cautiously down the tunnel with her light leading the way.
ここは病院じゃない。君は患者じゃない。営業スマイルが必要か？
じゃあこっちが先生の字ですか？
さあ、どうだかな。どうだっていいことだろ。
Ryoko suddenly stops and stares at the floor. When Koji looks over her shoulder, he sees a dust-covered rope lying coiled in the middle of the path.
何です？
あの井戸から降りてきたやつの小細工さ。
Ryoko picks up the rope, examines it, and hands it to Koji.
長さは私が使ったロープのほぼ2倍。途中に結び目があって、端は両方とも切断されてる。この両端がつながって輪になってたのさ。
え？
外のどこかにこの輪を引っ掛けて井戸の底まで伝って降りる。その後ナイフで輪を切って井戸の中に引っ張り込めば井戸の底に降りた痕跡は残らない。
Ryoko shines her light down the tunnel, revealing that it ends in a closed wooden door about 10 meters ahead.
こうやってここに逃げ込んだやつは追っ手の目をくらませたのさ。やられたよ。まんまと騙された。
先生、さっき前にも来たっていうのは。
ああ、君や咲坂君だけじゃない。私も以前オーガイを追ってこの別荘に来た。
Ryoko says dryly. As Ryoko speaks, she opens her coat and pulls out what she was hanging. Underneath it,
他に出口がないとしたら、奴はまだあの扉の向こう側にいるわけだ。
at first, Koji thinks that she's holding a steel pipe, amazed that she would be carrying a weapon. Koji looks closer and he is appalled when he realizes what it really is. A gun. And not just one of those sleek handguns that he's seen in movies, but a double-barreled shotgun. The stock and barrels have been sawed down for easier concealment, enhancing its aura of brutal efficiency.
何ですかそれ。
ショットガン、12番口径。
Ryoko replies blandly, as though naming a brand of cigarette.
私にはこいつを持ち歩く資格なんてないし、こんな風に改造するのも銃刀法違反だ。他に質問は？
そんなもの持ち出して一体どうするつもりです？
Ryoko looks over her shoulder and gives Koji her most chilling smile yet.
オーガイの正体を初めて知った時、私はただの善良な一般市民だった。交通違反すら無縁のね。
The woman whom Koji believed was just a normal doctor waves her sawed-off shotgun menacingly as she continues, her tone sharp and bitter.
あの時にこいつがあったなら、私は多分オーガイをきっちり殺せていただろう。そうなってれば、もしかしたら君たちがこんな災難に巻き込まれることもなかったかもしれない。その点は申し訳ないと思ってるよ。
ああ。
Koji listens in silence, helpless to do anything but watch, as understanding moves further and further out of his grasp.
だから、これから私がやることは一切合切。君とその友達が足を突っ込んでる泥沼なありさまを終わらせてやるための手続きだ。その辺をよく理解して余計な口は突っ込まないこと。いいね。
Koji can only nod weakly in response. With the light in her left hand and the shotgun in her right, Ryoko walks up to the door and takes a deep breath. Then she kicks the door open, putting her full weight behind the blow. With a disappointingly feeble sound, the door breaks off its hinges and falls into the room. Dust billows like white smoke in the beam of Ryoko's light. The room is large, at least 35 meters square. The tiled floor is set with drainage grates, and there's no mistaking the operating table sitting in the middle of the room. Cabinets full of enamelware and drugs line one side of the space, and against the opposite wall stands a writing desk and bookshelves. Those things Koji recognizes. The mysterious objects cluttering the tables and shelves, however, are beyond his comprehension. Mirrors delicately engraved with complex patterns. Grotesque statues and masks that have been left by a race of savages. Tapestries woven in nauseating arrays of color. A crystal ball the size of an infant's head. Any would fetch a hefty price at an antique store, if not for one thing they all have in common. Every last piece is so loathsome and foul that Koji feels sick just looking at it. It's as though each was designed for the sole sinister purpose of immortalizing its creator's hatred for the world. Rare-looking books of the sort that he found in Ogai's home are piled here and there, and on one shelf are stacked some scrolls that look to be made of some kind of sheepskin or papyrus. Whatever it is, it's not paper. Finally, there are the indecipherable chalk patterns and symbols, filling every available space on the walls. Even the two sliding blackboards are covered in strange unreadable scribblings. Just looking at them is making Koji dizzy.
見るんじゃない。
Ryoko snaps at him.
いいか、ここから動くな。絶対に何かに触ったりするな。目を引くようなものがあっても見つめたりしちゃいけない。まずいと思ったらすぐに目をそらして自分の靴を見ろ。わかった。
はあ。
Ryoko switches her light's fluorescent runners on and sets it on a nearby table, where it can illuminate the whole room. It then holsters her shotgun, only to pull out an even more confusing set of tools. A digital camera and a can of spray paint. She gives the can in her left hand a good shake, switches the camera in her right hand on, and steps up to the blackboard while looking at the camera's side-mounted screen. After recording one set of symbols, she covers it with a thick layer of paint, then moves on to the next.
先生。
レッスン1。妙な図形やラテン語の文章とかは絶対に読むな。見つめるな。機械の目で記録しておいて、後で注意深く調べればいい。現物はその場で塗りつぶすか何かして破壊しろ。
Now that she mentions it, Koji realizes that she's only looking at the screen of her camera. Even then, only in short glimpses and never directly at any of the drawing. He understands what she's saying, but it still doesn't make any sense.
一体どういう。
ここまで深入りしたんなら工学のために黙って聞いておけ。あと水晶球とか鏡の類も危ない。下手に壊すとやぶ蛇になったりするから、とりあえず布でもかぶせるかペンキを浴びせて封印しろ。
Koji begins to fear that this doctor might be even crazier than Fuminori. Despite the burst of energy he received from the vodka, Koji is still exhausted from his night in the well. The fear is affecting his body, making him dizzy and nauseous. Soon the walls are covered in black paint and the stale air is thick with the smell of
と
turpentine.
りあえずこんなところか。
Yoko says with a relief, then tosses the empty can aside and puts away her video camera.
オーガイって人はどうなったんです。
Koji asks, supporting himself against a nearby table.
ああ、そこにいたよ。
Without stopping her examination of the papers on the writing table, Ryoko points nonchalantly to a Chinese-style screen standing in one corner of the room. He was there. Her clinical choice of tense makes her meaning instantly obvious. The urge to see for himself is irresistible. Koji staggers across the room to the screen, taking the utmost care not to look at the scaly archivist thing that is painted on. Behind the screen is a large easy chair. Although he's never met the man before, Koji is fairly certain that the person sitting in it is Ogai Masahiko. Ogai's corpse must have shrunk significantly while drying in the sealed chamber. His body is barely the size of a child's, and only the business suit hanging from the bones offers any hint of Ogai's former stature. His empty eye sockets and wide-open jaw are filled with darkness, the same darkness that surrounded Koji at the bottom of the well. Compared to the gaping voids, the tiny hole in Ogai's right temple is almost a mirror. The revolver that he presumably used to kill himself is still clutched in his dangling right hand. It looks like a child's toy compared to Ryoko's shotgun. Ryoko must have noticed Ogai's corpse while she was spray painting the walls, and still she kept working without batting an eyelash. Impressive, though not exactly surprising after what he's been through. It's getting difficult to remember the last time he spoke to someone sane. But if not for her, Koji reminds himself with a bitter smirk, he would have ended up joining this mummified corpse here and no one would have ever found him. Koji's vision suddenly dims. He's pushed himself too hard, and the spiritus vodka can't help him anymore. He collapses to the floor, unable to hang on to his slipping consciousness. And the last thing he sees are Ogai Masahiko's gaping eye sockets staring at him. When he wakes, Koji finds himself lying on something dry and soft. A bed is a bed, he thinks to himself, even one that smells of mold and dust, and especially after sleeping in cold mud all night. There are no lights hanging from the ceiling, but the soft warm light of a lamp fills the room. Simple furnishings, non-existent decor. Koji realizes that he's in Ogai's cabin, and the bedroom that he searched before Fuminori pushed him into the well.
お目覚めかい?
Ryoko is sitting in a chair against the wall, her expression blank as she studies the pile of documents on the table in front of her. She must have brought them up from Ogai's underground lab. She turns a page, then takes a bite from the sandwich in her free hand.
食べる元気があるようなら、そこに。
Without looking up from the file, she gestures towards the convenience store bag, sitting on the nightstand.
俺をどうやってここに?
Koji can't imagine that a woman, even a woman like Ryoko, could have climbed out of the well with him on her back.
あの地下室、本棚の裏に開かない扉があってね。
Ryoko mutters, taking care not to let the explanation interfere with her reading or eating.
苦労して破ってみたら、別荘のボイラー室に出た。反対側は薄くモルタルを塗って隠してあったんだな。隠し部屋に機材を運び込んでからドアを塞いで、その後は井戸から出入りしていたんだろう。周到なもんだ。
そこまでして隠さなきゃならないものがあの部屋にあったんですか?
昔はね。それにさっきまでも。
Having finished her sandwich, Ryoko picks up some unsorted papers with her free hand and waves them in the air.
世界中の研究者が誰もかも学会で演壇に登ってリサイタルをやりたがるわけじゃないのさ。自分一人が秘密に通じて、最後には自分のしたいもろとも秘密の墓穴にしまい込んで満足するような、そういう変態野郎もいるんだよ。
Koji still hasn't the slightest idea what Ogai's secret might have been. From what Ryoko said in the tunnel, however, he can guess that Fuminori is somehow involved.
文則はどうなっちまったんですか?
Koji asks desperately, no longer caring who he gets answers from.
地下の死体と文則と一体どういう関係があるんです? 先生は一体何を追いかけてるんです?
今それを調べてるところだよ。
Ryoko replies calmly, as though Koji's concerns are none of hers.
私が咲坂君から聞いたところによると、彼はオーガイの親族から調査を頼まれているという話だった。
ええ、それは俺も聞いてます。
ん？そうか、一貫してるんだな。
Ryoko pulls several sheets of loose-leaf paper from a different file.
だがオーガイに血縁者はいない。私は咲坂君が嘘をついているものとばかり思っていた。だがもう一つの可能性を考えるべきだった。彼はオーガイの親族を名乗る何者かにそそのかされていたのかもしれない。
Ryoko pauses and looks sidelong at Koji.
サヤという名前に心当たりは？
サヤ？いいえ、誰なんですか？
さて誰なのか何なのか、読めば読むほどわからなくなっていく。
She sighs bitterly, then returns her attention to the papers in her hand.
間違いなく言えるのは、そいつがオーガイの研究の核にあるものらしいということだけだ。 もし咲坂君がこの鞘と呼ばれるものとすでに深く関わっているのなら、彼はもう引き返せないところまで踏み込んでいるということになる。
The icy certainty of Ryoko's voice sends a chill down Koji's spine.
だとしたらどうするつもりなんです、文則を。
He has to ask, even though he already knows the
さ
answer.
っきも言ったよね。1年前の私も手元に銃を持ってればってどれだけ後悔したか知れないんだ。
Ryoko replies, smirking at the tension in Koji's
もう
voice.
二度と後悔するつもりはない。
俺が警察に行けば済むことです。
Ryoko doesn't respond, as though she doesn't even hear what Koji just said.
文則がやったことは殺人未遂です。俺が訴えればあいつは犯罪者として。
Koji continues persistently.
目撃者は、物証は、咲坂君が君を殺す動機は。
Ryoko cuts him off harshly.
なあ、殿君。君は警察の仕事についてひどく勘違いしている。彼らの職分は正義を貫くことでも、市民の安全を守ることでもない。
そんな。
不条理な物事について、きちんと条理に沿った体裁を整える。これが警察っていう役所の仕事だ。彼らの思考はいつだってより理解しやすい方、より説明しやすい方に傾いていく。それこそ水が低い方へ低い方へと流れていくように。
I mean, yeah, fair enough. She's not really
事
wrong.
実がどうあろうと彼らには興味ない。彼らが感知するところではないんだよ。小説より奇なる事実なんてものは。
そこまで決めつけることないでしょう。話してみなければ分かりませんよ。
そう、わからない。そこが問題だ。
Ryoko states as she pulls another sandwich out of the bag. She hasn't spared Koji a second glance since looking at him earlier. Even while talking, her attention is always focused on the papers in front of her.
君が錯乱した親友の手で井戸に落とされたと主張する。すると、警察はあと2つばかり真実の候補を用意するだろう。君が狂言自殺で親友を陥れようとしてるとか、あるいはもっとシンプルに、事故で井戸に落ちた君が錯乱して親友を疑ってるとか。この3案のどれかが捜査っていうレースで勝ちを競うわけだ。勝ち馬は誰にもわからない。こんな博打に君は寝台潰すまでかける気かい？
Koji has no response. Did he really explain with cold, clear logic what drove Suminori to do what he did? How can he convince anyone when he doesn't even understand it himself?
そして一番の問題は、
Ryoko says calmly, cutting into Koji's thought.
君がそういうランチキ騒ぎに手こずっている隙に咲坂文則を追い詰めるチャンスを逃すことだよ。身辺で火の手が上がれば彼は手遅れになる前にさっさと姿をくらますだろう。そうやってまた万事が振り出しに戻る。
He pauses to take a bite out of her sandwich before finishing.
私がオーガイを取り逃がしたようにね。
A heavy silence falls upon them, with only the soft rustle of pages turning in Ryoko's hands to mark the passage of time.
教えてくださいよ先生。
Koji says, his hushed voice breaking through the quiet.
あなたが警察を差し置いてまで処刑しようなんて思うほどそこまで許しがたいことって何なんです？オーガイって人はあの地下室で何をやってたんですか？
Once again, Ryoko ignores Koji's question. This time, however, Koji doesn't back down. His silent glare demands her attention as she pours through the documents before her. After some time, Ryoko rearranges her papers in her hands and sets them aside as though having come to some conclusion. She then turns her chair to face Koji for the first time since he awoke.
なあ、殿くん。
Her hard stare belies the calmness of her
君
voice.
はここいら辺で降りた方がいい。ナスカ日光の温泉でゆっくり羽を伸ばして、何もかも忘れる気になってから東京に戻ってきなさい。
忘れろと。
Koji feels anger rise within him.
近江は俺の恋人でした。文則は俺の親友でした。それを忘れろと。
そうだ、忘れろ。これは提案じゃない。警告だ。
Ryoko replies coolly, rebuffing Koji's anger.
今まではどうであれ。これからの君の人生に、その二人は一切関わりを持たないだろう。断言してもいい。
じゃあ、筑波は
Koji shouts, unable to control himself.
彼女はどうなる？あの子は電話口で俺に助けを求めてた。どこかでひどい目に遭わされてたんだ。
そりゃ何十時間前の話かね。私が君を助けてから何時間経ったと思う？そうでなければ、井戸の中の君があと何時間持ったと思う？遅すぎるよ。
She shakes her.
彼女はとっくに死んでるだろう。誰もが君ほど幸運だなんて思わない方がいい。
She shakes her head and declares coldly.
あんたは
Koji growls, unable to suppress his anger.
あの井戸で俺の死体を見つけても、あんた何とも思わなかったんだろうな。
そりゃ覚悟してたからね。まさか生きてるとは思わなかったよ。
Ryoko says with a shrug, unfazed by Koji's ire. It is futile to argue with this woman, Koji realizes. Her values are fundamentally different from his own. Nothing he can say will ever move her. Koji gets out of bed and stands on shaky legs.
どのくらい俺は寝てたんです？
ざっと半日ばかり。消耗した後速やかに休息が取れるってのは羨ましいね。若いうちだけだよ、そういう無茶が効くのは。
Koji looks at his watch and sees that it's 4 in the morning, which means that it was already early evening when Ryoko rescued him. He can't believe he survived in that well for almost 2 days. Now that the gaps in his memory have been filled and his sense of time has returned, he realizes that it's already Sunday morning. Ryoko's right, a lot of time has passed since he spoke to Yo on the phone. Koji grabs a sports drink and 2 jelly packs from the bag of food that Ryoko bought, then heads for the door. His legs are still a little unsteady, but he can compensate for that with sheer willpower.
念のため聞かせてもらうが、どこに行くつもりだい？
東京へ。
Koji replies briskly, his tone as hard as hers.
筑波陽はまだ間に合うかもしれない。彼女を助けに行きます。
人の話を聞かないやつだね、君は。
聞く耳持たないのはお互い様でしょう。
Koji is expecting Ryoko to watch him go with that cold, mocking smile of hers. Instead, however, she sighs heavily and rests her jaw in her hand.
もう少し待つ気はないか。こいつのどこかに。
She thrusts her chin at the mountainous papers in front of her.
オーガイがサヤと名付けたものが何だったのか、答えが隠されてるはずだ。そいつを突き止めて、ちゃんと対策を講じてから動くべきだと私は思う。
筑波が死んでると決めてかかってるあんたなら、当然そう思うでしょうね。
In truth, Koji is extremely uneasy about going it alone. At the same time, however, he knows that he mustn't depend on Ryoko. He made it clear that she doesn't care about saving lives. Giving up with her will only make it more difficult to salvage something, anything out of this nightmare.
殿くん、
Ryoko calls out just before Koji steps out of the door.
仮にも一度は殺されかかってるんだ。もう二度と殺されるな。
She picks something up from the table and tosses it to Koji. When Koji catches it, he feels its solid weight fill his hand.
これは
Ogai's revolver? Koji stares at the menacing shape of the cold metal. It's a revolver, the same one that was clenched in Ogai's skeletal fist.
あと4発入ってる。安全装置はない。引き金を引くだけで弾が出る。どこでどう使うかは君の判断に任せるよ。
If Koji were his usual cautious self, he would not hesitate to reject the dangerous offering. The only time you truly need a gun is when all hope is lost. You prefer not to fight a losing war. And yet, without even knowing it, Koji was already set foot into Ryoko's world. Using instinct over reason, he accepts the small but deadly weapon and stuffs it into his pocket. Is that a revolver in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? There's no question that Koji intends to save Yo and bring Fuminori to answer for his crimes. In the back of his mind, however, he can hear the footsteps of ruin approaching. When he steps out of the cabin's front door, Koji shivers as the wind tears into his skin. To his surprise, the outside air is even colder than the mud at the bottom of the well. Perhaps the cramped space mitigated the cold somewhat. If he had been exposed to the chill all night long, he surely would have frozen to death. Koji finds 2 cars parked in the yard. The smaller car next to his must be Ryoko's. When he sits behind the wheel of his car, he gets some relief from a feeling that he had taken his first step, however small, back into his world. He sips the sports drink, wetting his parched throat, then washes down some jelly. His stomach rebels at the sudden influx of food after 36 hours on empty, but he manages to force down the urge to vomit. Koji needs the energy. No matter how hard it is, he must regain enough stamina to overcome the challenges ahead. After forcing down as much food as he can handle, Koji leans back in his seat and takes a short break. When he begins to feel like himself again, he reaches into the back seat and pulls a spare cell phone out of his bag. He never expected that carrying 2 phones would be such a stroke of luck. He calls up Fuminori's number and prepares to hit send. Koji is overcome by a flood of emotion. Rage, despair, sorrow, pity. He is unable to decide what to feel toward his friend. However, there's no time to dwell on his past. Every second lost diminishes the chance of saving Omi and Yo. Koji refuses to consider that it may already be too late. He steels himself and presses the button, and holds the phone to his ear as it rings. The shrill sound seems to go on longer than it ever has in his life. Right now, Fuminori's phone must be displaying the name of the caller, but he wonders what his reaction will be when he sees it. The call goes through. In the silence on the other end of the phone, Koji senses surprise, apprehension, and dark fury. Feeling slightly gratified, Koji delivers the first jab.
よう、そんなに意外か、死人からの電話は。
驚いたね。どうやって。
As Koji is about to answer, an idea suddenly comes to him.
井戸の底に仕掛けがあったのさ。地下の隠し部屋に行くためのな。
Koji says, a plan forming rapidly in his mind. He pauses to let that sink in, then with satisfaction filling his voice, he says,
会えたぜ、大貝正彦と。
Fuminori's gasp tells Koji that the advantage is his. Giving his voice bold, he decides to further exaggerate the truth.
何もかも分かった。サヤってやつのことも全部。お前たちは終わりだよ、文則。何もかもバラしてやる。ところ構わずにぶちまけてやる。証拠はちゃんと揃ってるからな。
貴様は。
It's obvious from Fuminori's tone that rage has overwhelmed his reason. Koji's bluff is working perfectly. His victory is tainted, however, as Fuminori's response to the name Saya brings a cry of anguish from the corner of his heart that still wants to believe his friend can be saved.
咲坂君がこのサヤと呼ばれるものとすでに深く関わっているのなら。
Yoko's words play back in his head, sounding even colder than before.
彼はもう引き返せないところまで踏み込んでいる。
He mustn't allow emotion to sway him.
文則、近江と筑波はどこだ？
Koji suddenly switches topics, trying to keep Fuminori off balance. It all comes down to this.
俺にだって情けはある。お前の出方次第では考えんでもない。お前がこれ以上誰も傷つけないというのなら、俺にしたことは忘れてやる。この別荘で見つけたことも、俺だってこれ以上お前とサヤに関わり合いを持つのは願い下げなんだ。近江たちさえ無事に戻ればいい。
近江とようね。
Fuminori's voice trails off. He's obviously trying to decide how far Koji can be trusted, and whether there's room for negotiation. Fuminori has been called out, and now it's time for him to show his hand.
近江のことは本当に知らない。彼女は僕の家まで来ていない。でもよ。
Fuminori pauses, then gives a knowing chuckle that sends chills up Koji's spine.
よはどうだかな。彼女自身が戻りたがるかどうか。
お前のところにいるんだな。
Koji is relieved to learn Yo's location and that she is at least still alive. At the same time, however, he remembers that horrifying phone call. It is clear now that Fuminori played some part in Yo's suffering. Had she already fallen into his trap back then? What has happened to her? How is she being treated?
彼女はね、念願かなってようやく僕の持ち物になったんだよ。お前と近江のお膳立てもようやく実を結んだわけだな。
Fuminori says with venomous sarcasm. Koji feels despair settle over his soul. How much lower will this man go? Must Fuminori seek out and destroy every memory of the friendship they once shared?
筑波を解放しろ。彼女の安全を確認したら、お前らについての証拠を破棄してやる。
信用できるか。そっちが先に。
お前に選択の余地を与えるつもりはないよ、文則。
Koji instinctively realizes that it's dangerous to push his bluff any further.
後でまた連絡する。それまでによく考えておけ。
He hangs up without waiting for a response. Fuminori doesn't know that Koji is still at the cabin in Tochigi. Right now he's probably worrying about whether Koji will show up in 1 hour or 1 minute. Koji hopes that he'll be able to take advantage of Fuminori's confusion. 3 hours. That's how long it will take to race all the way back to Tokyo. Koji is afraid that his body won't carry him through such a long drive. His mind is clear, but his limbs still feel half asleep, like they're weighed down with lead. Although he knows that he has to stay resolute, Koji still longs for the peace he had just a few days ago, when life or death struggles were the furthest thing from his mind. Back then, he could never have imagined himself fighting to rescue a friend from the clutches of a madman. With each passing moment, he feels himself becoming less like the person he was. When all of this is over, will he be able to return to his old life? Or will this change continue until it has consumed him utterly? Time is against him. Every second that passes is wasted. Even so, he decides to allow himself just 5 minutes of weakness. For exactly 5 minutes, he leans against the steering wheel and cries. And when his tears have run dry and his heart is calm, Koji starts up his car and drives away. Whoa, I'm going to have to disable voices here. I stare at the silent phone in my hand. There's anger, of course, but something cold and heavy holds my emotions in check. This sense of danger. To be honest, I'm surprised at how calm I am. Master? Yo looks up at me apprehensively, her head between my thighs. She was attending to my manhood throughout the call. Perhaps mistaking my silence for annoyance, she desperately rubs her breast against my shaft and attacks the head of my penis with her tongue. The remaining fragments of her memory seem to have joined together as she regains some degree of speech. Upon realizing that last night, Saya began to teach her language once more. I assume she finds our pet's efforts amusing. Don't be mad. Yo will try harder. Still gazing up at me pleadingly, Yo sucks on my penis without even taking the time to breathe. Her ministration's starting to fill my head with a white fog of pleasure that would impede any thoughts. And besides, my arousal has already vanished. At first, I consider making her stop. When I gaze at her puppy dog eyes, however, I begin to think differently. Thanks to Saya, I have the family once again. For the first time, I am becoming aware of the responsibility that places on me. I am now the head of a new Sakisaka household, as well as its only male member. My duty to protect, comfort, and ensure the happiness of the women living under my roof. With that in mind, I know that I mustn't show any fear or confusion. That would only cause them distress. Continue. Yes, Master. I entrust my manhood to Yo's right breasts, basking in the pleasure, with one part of my mind while contemplating our current predicament with the other. It is clear that I made a grave error when I failed to finish Koji off 2 days ago. Right now, I need to set my frustration and anger aside and deal with the problem logically. It's time to leave. I have no way of knowing when Koji escaped from the well or how much he has learned, or how many people he has had contact with since then. Now that it's impossible to know how far the problem has spread, merely disposing of Koji won't guarantee our safety. When the enemy has poisoned your water supply, you can't take the risk that even one drop might remain. Your only choice is to stop drinking the water. Okay, I can re-enable voices yet. Saya returns from the kitchen where she'd gone in search of a midnight snack. She's munching on her favorite, spare ribs. Purging myself of unease and impatience, I respond with a casual shrug. It looks like we have a little problem. That bastard Koji is still alive. Oh dear. By breaking the news suddenly and without any trace of anxiety, I am able to avoid frightening Saya. Instead, she is merely surprised. I knew that remaining calm would work. Moreover, I am currently getting my penis sucked by Yo. It would be hard for anyone to get too serious under these circumstances. Saya, it might be best if we leave this house. Saya lowers her eyes and strokes her chin thoughtfully. This was bound to happen sooner or later. Even without Koji, it's only a matter of time before someone reports the Suzumi family missing. Yeah, Saya nods. I can tell that she's reluctant to leave, but at least there is no sadness in her expression. Everything will be fine. I will protect my life with Saya just as I have until now. I have that power. Knowing that we'll overcome one problem fills me with new confidence. By the way, Saya, I'm almost... What? Oh, wait. Saya hastily discards her spare ribs and pushes the still-sucking Yo off of me. Kuminori, you're never this hard when you make love to me. Well, Despite her scolding tone, Saya gently and passionately wraps her mouth around my manhood. With my orgasm already charged up by Yo, Saya's ravenous tongue and throat push me over the edge instantly. Saya, Come on, give me your... Before Saya finishes, I thrust deep into her throat and unleash my lust as I stare into her eyes, wide with surprise. Even while mooning around my penis, Saya grabs me firmly by the waist and swallows all of my seed without choking. That was good. You're so greedy, Saya, I say, smiling wryly as I look at Yo, who's still lying limply on the floor. Okay, now I think I'm good to re-enable voices.
絶対に独り占めなんだな、それ。
当然でしょ。他の女にあげたりしたら承知しないんだから。
After baring her teeth at me grumpily, she burrows her face into my stomach.
本当に嫌だよ。
It's adorable how Saya goes from angry to pleading like this. I find myself reaching down to muss up her hair.
大丈夫。安心していいよ。さあ、じゃあ急いで支度しよう。
Now then, we'd better get ready. We can travel light and take the Suzumi family car. I better withdraw everything that's left in my bank account and carry it as cash. I'll also need a weapon, something more reliable than a butcher's knife. Koji will most likely follow. He thinks that Yo can still be saved, however I'm not abandoning this house just to run away. As long as Koji knows our location, we're stuck on the defensive. Leaving gives me the chance to regain the initiative and deal with him at a place of my choosing. The next time we meet, I'll kill him with my own 2 hands. I'll make sure to wring every last drop of life out of his body. A shiver runs through me as I anticipate the battle ahead, and my bloodlust burns like orgasmic fire. When Ryoko looks up, the morning sun is already streaming in through the window. Tired from hours of poring over files, she removes her glasses and massages her aching eyes. My dreams are always filled with horror, yet the night she just spent was more nightmarish than in them all. And it's not over yet. She has only just set foot in the threshold. As expected, the files left by Ogai Masahiko were not the sort that Ryoko could simply pick up and read. Fortunately, Ogai had been too old-fashioned to put his trust in electronic media. If he'd encrypted his files on a computer, she'd have had to find a hacker to decipher them. In fact, he had not employed any kind of code in his writing. That would have been too time-consuming by hand. The method of obfuscation he did use was quite simple. Of the files Ryoko pulled from his underground lab, the majority turned out to be notes and theses from Ogai's days as a student. The important papers were all diaries and research notes that had been scattered throughout the piles of worthless scrap. At first, she was unable to understand the documents that she had found. Each sheet was covered with text on one side and blank on the other. Each line was completely unrelated to the next, making it impossible to glean any meaning from the whole. The trick revealed itself, however, when she was sorting the pages that made no sense. She found that each line continued on the same line of a different page. In Ogai's diary, for example, the first day began on the first line, then continued not with the next line, but with the first line on the next page. Similarly, the second day was the second line, the third day was the third line, and so on and so forth. Showing all the lines on one set of pages, Ogai had torn them out and scattered them among his other files. There was no regularity to how the pages were numbered, of course. Unable to locate any sort of key or legend, Ryoko had no choice but to figure out the page order manually. Despite knowing that the task would be exhausting, Ryoko set to it valiantly. After separating all the loose-leaf sheets from the jumbled files, she began the painstaking process of linking pages together according to the contents of their first line. She found that Ogai had dismantled and scattered his diary each time he completed a number of days equal to the number of lines on one page, and had done the same with his research notes every 30 pages or so. The diary is much easier to restore because the entries varied in length. Later pages had a larger number of blank lines. The page with only one line, therefore, was the last page of the diary, and those with the most blank pages could be considered closer to the end. Ryoko's perseverance has paid off, for she has already succeeded in restoring several volumes of Ogai's diary. As she reads them, she feels despair draining her spirit as it has so many times before. This cursed feeling of powerlessness that comes with knowing hidden truths. Those which have tasted it shall be beaten down by it again and again until the day they die. All secrets are connected after all. Once you have glimpsed even the tiniest fraction of the world's true face, you have no choice but to watch in horror as the veil rolls itself back inch by inch. All that remains is to wait for the day when insanity will crush your reason under its ever-mounting weight. Has succeeded in communicating with the organism, which has enormous curiosity and its intelligence is beyond doubt. The research notes for confirmed vocal patterns in body language. Its appetite for knowledge is insatiable, and its learning speed is off the charts. However, it exhibits absolutely no desire to be recognized as an individual. Its ego appears to be quite weak, suggesting a psyche wholly unlike that of a human. The speed of the organism's linguistic development is astounding. and I laughed at its mispronunciations and immediately picked up on the concept of puns. Ever since, it has been employing its entire vocabulary in an attempt to find puns that will make me laugh. Perhaps in a few days' time, it will have learned enough language for us to communicate freely. The organism's command of spoken language is now sufficient to facilitate a higher-level discourse, but although it has regaled me with questions all day, it remains unable to answer any of mine. Its reply suggests that it gained awareness only after materializing in this universe. It has no knowledge of where it came from. While I am disappointed in the fact that it has reached this level of intelligence only 1 week after starting, to think tells me that this is no end to where it can... There is no end to what I can learn from it. Hypothesis. It is not a naturally occurring organism, but was created by an even more sophisticated sentient life form. This would explain why it has no ego, yet possesses such a hunger for knowledge. It might be some sort of reconnaissance drone that was sent here from another world. Ryoko smiles humorously for the upteenth time since she started reading. However wonderful it would be if she could laugh the diary off as the deletions of a madman or the work of a science fiction author. Alas, she knows far too much. When she thinks back to the many horrors that Ogai brought into her life, the words before her take on chilling credibility. I have confirmed that the organism's brain power far surpasses any human's. This morning I taught it about prime numbers, after I explained the Lucas-Lemaire test for Mersenne primes, and immediately began to list examples that it had calculated in its head. I was only able to confirm by memory up to number 10, M89. But it continued to list further examples without any trouble. I left it to its calculations, and when I returned a few hours later, I discovered that I had written down more than 70 of them. Computers all over the world are currently working to calculate Mersenne primes, but the last one I remember being found was the 39th back in 2001. When I entered several of the results into my laptop and ran the Lucas-Lemaire test on them, I found that everyone was correct. The same is no doubt true for the rest. After all, the organism has never shown the pathological need for respect that would lead it to lie about its accomplishments. I see no reason to doubt its veracity. If I could reveal to the world an expedient method for discovering Mersenne primes, the prize money would make me a billionaire. Of course, my current research is worth far more than any sum of money. I must keep it a secret. The organism's computational speed exceeds that of even the most powerful supercomputers. I can only conclude that its cognitive faculties are beyond anything humanity can imagine. At the organism's request, I have begun a new field of study. Despite its immeasurable aptitude for mathematics, it now desires to concentrate on sociology and the natural sciences. Perhaps our math problems are simply too elementary for it. Has shown especially keen interest in the means by which organisms reproduce and multiply. As it possesses nothing that could be called emotion, I hesitate to use the description, but when it learned about DNA, it seemed somehow excited. In fact, the organism itself seemed surprised by its reaction. When asked about the nature of the impulse, the organism decided to label it instinct. If this description is indeed accurate, then this is extremely significant development. would mean that there is a deeper level to its psyche than just the knowledge it has acquired since coming to this world. If I can use this discovery to trace its roots, I might be able to learn what it truly is. Note: candidates for the plane and world of the organism's origin are discussed in my writings on the Silver Key, filed separately. I spent the whole day carrying books into its room. Apparently, the organism is no longer satisfied by the knowledge I am able to impart. It should come as no surprise considering its linguistic prowess, but the speed at which it consumes text is astounding. The diary continues for some time, chronicling the intimate relationship between Ogai and the organism. In the back of her mind, Ryoko imagines the old doctor climbing down the well in the middle of the night to hold congress with some inhuman creature in that bizarre laboratory. The image is disturbingly similar to the nightmares that have shattered the silence of many nights with her screams. What follows, however, makes even her worst nightmares pale in comparison. The organism has made a very strange request. This is the first time it has asked for anything other than food and reading materials. I can hardly believe it, but it wants to consume the sperm of living creatures. This is separate from its desire for food. Once again, it is describing this impulse as instinctive. Now that it has declared itself a life form that requires the seed of males, it has begun to identify itself as female. After today, I suppose I shall have to start calling the organism a she. Is the personality that she has begun to exhibit really just an imitation created for her amusement? Ever since she started to immerse herself in our literature, she has been astoundingly human. She identifies herself as female and already possesses an enormous store of cultural knowledge. Is she trying to create a human identity for herself based on these? I've seen her laugh, grow angry, and today she cried. Is she just copying our emotional displays? If not, then she is already... Is the soul something that any intelligent life form can acquire? I feel that I'm witnessing something more mysterious than the genesis of life itself. Today's her birthday. Although it is a year late, I wanted to give her a special gift. Saya was the name of my mother's cat. In childhood, she was my sole friend and my beloved. I decided long ago that if I were ever blessed with children, I would give this name to my daughter. Happy birthday, Saya. Let this be the name of your soul. You have earned it. The ability that Saya has discovered in herself is showing more extraordinary results each day. I have no doubt that she is a kind of artist. What exactly is it that she created in her body from the rat semen I gave her? At this point, I can only surmise that it is a type of retrovirus. A reverse transcriptase enzyme that creates exactly what she desired. The rats that have been transformed by her art are so beautiful now. The many enzymes secreted by her body and the various appendages she uses are discussed in detail in my biological observations filed separately. Here I will say this. By witnessing Saya perform her operations on several rats, I've gained much confidence in my theory that her body is designed specially to manipulate the biology of other organisms. Ryoko looks grimly at the still unsorted mountain of research notes. When she finally manages to separate those papers, she will probably find the many other files mentioned in the diary. Ogai's biological observations at the very least. He wanted to look through these before facing the thing called Saya. Under no circumstances does she want to go into battle unprepared. She looks at her watch and sees it's already 7 in the morning. Assuming Tono Koji made no stops, he should be arriving in Tokyo about now. Now that it's too late, she wishes she'd stopped that stubborn fool from leaving, even if she'd had to shoot him in the leg to do it. Koji pulls up 2 blocks away from the Saka house and stares at the silent building. In the bright light of the morning, the house seems shrouded in a dark miasma, like a black hole torn out of the landscape. Is it just a figment of Koji's imagination? Every window is closed, offering no glimpse of the inside. Koji has no way of knowing whether Fuminori is home. A pedestrian walks his dog down the street, glancing back at Koji through the windshield after he passes by. Koji isn't surprised by the attention. He hasn't bathed or changed clothes since spending the night buried in mud, so he must look like a vagrant, even inside his car. When he looks into the rearview mirror, he sees the haggard visage of a man with one foot in the grave staring back at him. It's hard to believe that the tired and shaven face is really his. If he stays here for too long, someone might report him to the police. He'd better pull himself together and get moving. He drives slowly up to the front of Fuminori's house, quickly checks to make sure no one is around, and gets out of the car. Anyone who might be in the house probably heard the sound of the engine, but there's no point in worrying about that now. Koji walks swiftly through the gate and yard to the front door. He puts his hand on the doorknob, forgetting the bell. This time for such pleasantries had passed. The door is unlocked and the knob turns easily in his hand. He puts his ear to the door and listens for any sign of life. He's acting like a thief, he realizes with some shame, but that is the least of his worries now. No sound from within. After checking the street again to make sure no one is looking, he quickly opens the door and disappears inside. An indescribable stink immediately assaults his nostrils. He is already prepared for anything. However, so rather than discouraging him, the stench only sharpens his caution to a razor's edge. He has crossed this threshold many times in the past, and his memories of days spent here are still bright. So why does he feel the same ominous blood-chilling aura that permeated Ogai's home and cabin? Anger and sorrow seize Koji's heart, as though a dear friend's grave has been defiled. Koji doesn't remove his shoes before entering. He knows why he's here, and it's not to be polite. Every storm shutter is closed, filling the house with gloom, and they can see nothing but pitch-black darkness through the open doors in the hallway. He should have brought his flashlight from the car, he thinks ruefully. Then remembers that he dropped the light when Fuminori attacked him. It's still lying in the backyard of the cabin in Tochigi. The house might be empty, then again it might not. Each particle of the air seems charged with silent menace. His enemy lurking somewhere in the darkness? It's not hard to imagine Fuminori waiting for a chance to take him by surprise and finish what the well failed to. Koji walks down the first floor hallway, then climbs the stairs and checks the second floor too. He moves slowly and carefully, keeping his senses sharp, but feels nothing watching him from the shadows. After completing his round safely, he is convinced that the house is empty. He suddenly realizes that his right hand is touching the cold steel of the gun in his pocket. Did he really intend to draw the weapon upon encountering Fuminori? Now that Koji thinks about it, his own actions seem mysterious to him. What is he planning to do when he meets Fuminori? Will he lay into him with curses and epithets? Will he force him to turn himself in, or will he... Koji shakes his head. This isn't the time for such hopeless questions. If he keeps thinking, he'll stop moving. If he does stop moving, fear will paralyze him forever. His only choice is to keep marching on. He has no choice. He has to close the distance to his prey. In any case, Fuminori isn't home. What form their reunion takes will probably be decided at the moment of their meeting. All Koji has to do is not hesitate when the time comes. No, why does the whole house smell like stagnant water? It's been 3 months since Fuminori distanced himself from his friends. Just what kind of life has he been living all this time? Okay, we're actually running low on time here, so... I think this is where I'm gonna call it for now. And then we'll finish off next time, hopefully. So, yeah, that's where we're gonna leave it off this time. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. And I'll see you next time when we hopefully finish off Sayonara for real this time. Until then, if you made it this far, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!